Hello, I'm Matteo, the Chief Mobile Opinionist here at Tech Travel Geeks, and this is the Tech Travel Geeks side-by-side comparison of the Nokia 3.4 and the OnePlus Nord N100, both devices released in the latter part of 2020 and both of them having the same Qualcomm chipset, that specifically is the Qualcomm Snapdragon 460. If you don't already, please do subscribe to the Tech Travel Geeks here on YouTube. Right then, in the last week, two of our most popular videos have been the unboxing and the follow-up video on the setup experience for the Nokia 3.4, followed very closely by the unboxing and setup video for the OnePlus Nord N100. As I said in the intro, both of these devices have, in this case, Qualcomm Snapdragon chipsets, very specifically the Qualcomm Snapdragon 460. So both of the devices are well under £200 sterling, but the interesting thing is that in this case, Nokia seem to be offering better value, and I'll explain why here. So both devices, as you can see, have nice big screens. They're both, in this case, 6.39-inch screens, and then there's a 6.5-inch screen. In terms of the width, so the width at the bottom, they're pretty much the same. But the difference is that the OnePlus Nord N100, as you can see side by side, is just marginally longer. And that's because it's a different aspect ratio. The Nokia 3.4 is, in this case, a 19.5:9 aspect ratio, whereas the OnePlus Nord is a 20:9 aspect ratio. It's slightly longer, and that gives you the extra diagonal length. In terms of resolution, they're very similar. They're both 720 or HD plus displays. So you'll see at the bottom, the width in this case is 720 pixels, and the length on the OnePlus Nord in this case is 1600 pixels, whereas on the Nokia 3.4 it's 1560 pixels. So in terms of screens, apart from that minor difference in aspect ratio and length, they're very similar. And they're also very similar in terms of their performance and touch responsiveness. They're very responsive, they reproduce good colors, they have good saturation, and they both have notches in the top of the screen, on the top left-hand side of the screen. So they have a lot of design cues in common. And as I said, they both run on Snapdragon 460 chipsets. Now, the chipset itself is not an indicator of the overall user experience. There's a lot of things that go into that, like combinations of the memory in the device, how the operating system is integrated into that, and how tightly tied in they are. Now, the Nokia 3.4's offering is, in this case, Android One, a very closely partnered version of Android made with Google. And so it's pretty much the stock experience. I hate that word, but this is probably the best way to explain that. It's very pixel-like in its software experience. You have a basic launcher with app drawer, you swipe to the left and you get the Google feeds, and you can add screens and widgets as you go. Now, the OnePlus software experience is in many ways a step up. This OnePlus Nord N100 is running Oxygen OS, which is OnePlus's own operating system. Now, the operating system has quite a few extra features. You can add colors. There's a lot going on here. But in of itself, it is very close to the Google experience and the philosophy of user experience as it stands with Android 10 on OnePlus's Oxygen OS 10. Now, we have seen early previews of what the OnePlus Nord is going to get with regards to Android 11. There is going to be quite a step up or a step away from the stock or Google experience in terms of the look and feel. but it's a bit too early to say at the moment because it's likely to be a few months before the OnePlus Nord N100 does get Oxygen OS 11. Whereas with the Nokia 3.4, it is unlikely to change too much, and if it does, it will be in line with Google's own user experience setup. Now, I touched on updates here. That's a really important thing to bear in mind. The Nokia 3.4 is part of Android One. Now, if you look at the back of many Android One devices, it says Android One at the bottom. The Nokia 3.4 doesn't do that. But according to the packaging of the device, as we saw in the unboxing, and to the news Nokia gave out, this should expect 2 years of software updates. Now, they don't specify which operating system updates the device will get. They have been very, in my view, misleading over the past years with their Android One devices and updates, as well as their Android Go devices and updates. It's been a mixed bag. Obviously, the higher end the devices, the more likely they are to get functional updates. For the lower end, the Nokia 1 series, 2 series, and their various iterations, I would say Nokia have not been good in that respect. They promise a lot, but don't deliver. Whereas OnePlus historically do deliver, and maybe over-deliver in terms of their software updates. Sadly, with the OnePlus Nord N100, OnePlus have announced that it will only get one major operating system upgrade. So that Android 11, that Oxygen OS 11 update that we mentioned earlier, is likely to be the only one it gets over the life of the product. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but for some enthusiasts, the OnePlus brand stands for the latest and greatest, both in terms of Oxygen OS and in terms of hardware in some cases. But this is quite a trade-off device. The Nokia 3.4 is a par for the course in Nokia's book, whereas the OnePlus Nord N100 is a bit of a, let's put it this way, it's a bit of a spaghetti thrown against the wall device in the OnePlus range. It's the first time they've really done a low-end device, or low-end in their product portfolio. Priced at £179, there's a lot of trade-offs. One of the key ones being that there is no NFC on the device. So this takes us back to the original OnePlus One, which did have NFC, and then for some strange reason the OnePlus 2 didn't have it. The OnePlus Nord N100 launches and won't get NFC because hardware is required. So if we go into settings and search for NFC, sadly nothing is there. No search results within settings. So you won't be able to use your OnePlus Nord N100 to, say, tap and pay in shops. You won't be able to use it to access transit using contactless. It's quite a sad state of affairs for a device that trades on the OnePlus brand not having that key feature. Whereas if we look at the Nokia 3.4 and go into settings, you can just look here and search within the settings again, and NFC is there. So you have the option to use NFC for Google Pay. You have the option to use it to access, say, the London Tube. This is a device which launches at a significantly lower price than the OnePlus Nord N100. So I have to say that is one big factor which left me a bit perplexed about this device. And thankfully, a lot of our commenters on our previous videos that we published on the OnePlus Nord N100 made it clear that this is very similar in terms of specifications to another device, the Oppo A53, released in 2020. So pretty much the OnePlus Nord N100 confirms itself as a rebadged Oppo device with Oxygen OS. So we've looked at the key features and things that stand out about the Nokia 3.4 and the OnePlus Nord N100. Both of them have fingerprint scanners mounted on the back. I really, really like this feature. It's convenient, it's ergonomic, it just works. And I really do appreciate the fact both of these companies, Nokia and OnePlus, have done that. If we look at the back, both devices have triple camera setups. Nokia are using the round camera module design language. They have 3 sensors there, whereas OnePlus Nord with the OnePlus Nord N100 have 3 camera modules in a row, offset to one side, which is great. Different designs, different identity. Both of them are quite recognizable, especially with their branding on the devices. But let's look in detail at the cameras themselves. Let us know in the comments if you'd like to see a side-by-side camera comparison between the two devices. We'll see if we have time to make one of those videos. But in my experience, the winner between the two devices is definitely the Nokia 3.4, which has a 13 megapixel main sensor, just the same as the main sensor on the Nokia N100. Sorry, on the OnePlus Nord N100. In my experience, in both clear, good light conditions and low light conditions, the Nokia just performed better. The pictures were more usable. Whether that's down to software or the camera module themselves, I can't say, but Nokia definitely have the upper hand in this space. And then the other thing is both cameras have another 2 cameras or lenses within them. Let's face it, in day-to-day use you won't use either of them. On the Nokia there's a 5 megapixel ultra-wide lens, which is useful in outdoor conditions and good lighting. Just don't expect it to work very well in low light. It is really, really quite disappointing. And there's also a 2 megapixel depth sensor, whereas OnePlus have gone ahead and put that pointless 2 megapixel macro sensor in the OnePlus Nord N100. So I'm taking away all the points for them for that, as well as a 2 megapixel depth sensor. So it's pretty pointless. They could have just saved that macro sensor and maybe cut the price a bit or added NFC. So nothing really to shout out about there. Now earlier we looked at the dot, or the camera holes that are on the top left hand side of the selfie cameras of the screen, and these are both 8 megapixel cameras. They're pretty much equivalent. There's no big difference between the two. So obviously these are not flagship devices, they're not even mid-range devices at this point. They're affordable smartphones in the hundreds to £180 price range, so you can't complain too much about the cameras not being great, but for their price range they're acceptable. Now one thing to be aware of is what the button layout is like. So it might be something that you need to get used to. The OnePlus Nord N100 has a single power button on the right hand side, and it has a volume rocker on the left hand side. Whereas the Nokia 3.4 has a power button on the right hand side and a volume rocker on the right hand side, whereas on the left hand side it has a dedicated Google Assistant button. So that's something that maybe if you're a fan of the Google Assistant, that's something you want to you want to use to access Google Assistant quickly. What's the weather like tomorrow? So it is very, very handy, but is it any different from invoking the assistant using the magic OKG words? I'll leave that up to you to decide. Now, the two devices, as I said, are quite different in price. In the UK at the moment, the version of the Nokia 3.4 you can purchase is £139. And that's the 3 gigabytes of RAM and 32 gigabytes of storage version. Whereas the OnePlus Nord N100 just has one version available, that's with 4 gigabytes of RAM and 64 gigabytes of storage. Both devices can be expanded using micro SD cards, But as we saw in our unboxing videos, the SD card slot on the Nokia 3.4 does not take away from an extra SIM card, whereas on the OnePlus Nord, you only have the option of one SIM card and one memory card, or two SIM cards. So they're both dual SIM devices. The Nokia 3.4 is more flexible in that sense. So let's go to the part where OnePlus definitely do win, is the battery and charging. So the Nokia 3.4 has a 4000 mAh battery, which is pretty standard in this category at the moment, and it charges at 10 watts. It's not really fast charging, it's the standard, it's 5 volt 2 amp. Whereas our OnePlus Nord N100 has a 5000 mAh battery. This is where OnePlus are making use of that higher aspect ratio, that longer device. They've managed to fit in a bigger 5000 mAh battery. Not only that, it fast charges at 18 watts. This isn't OnePlus's warp charging, it's 18 watt charging, similar to what we have on our Google Pixel 4a and the Google Pixel 5. It charges via, in this case, USB Type-C, but the OnePlus Nord here is the definite winner. The OnePlus Nord is USB Type-C, so is the Nokia 3.4. So no difference there. The difference is that the included charger is much faster and it can charge at a faster speed than the Nokia 3.4. Usually I'd expect it to be the other way around. If you have a smaller device, smaller battery, you'll opt for faster charging because people need to top up more frequently, whereas OnePlus have really won this category in the comparison between the two. These two devices are both on sale in the UK in the latter part of 2020. I'll drop links in the description to where you can purchase and read more about the devices. If you purchase from there, you'll be supporting the Tech Travel Geeks because they're affiliate links. The other thing I'd like to make you aware of is the fact that both devices are very pleasant to use. Obviously, we've gone through the pros and cons of both of them. For the price, you're getting a lot of smartphone. It's not the best value we've seen out there, but they're probably from two of the most trusted brands on the market in the UK at the moment. And in terms of software support and updates, they're both pretty much the standard, what you'd expect in the market. What you need to do here, if choosing between the two, is have a think about how you're going to be using the device, if contactless payments or use of them on public transit are important to you, and just as an extra, don't buy these devices with the view of promises in future updates. Please do buy them in terms of what they offer now, because in my experience, both companies have been a bit questionable in what they promise in terms of software updates and what and when that gets delivered. But either way, both devices are great value for money. We will probably be following up this video with more comparisons. Maybe we'll compare the OnePlus Nord N100 with the Nokia 5.3, which has been one of our most popular devices on the Tech Travel Geeks YouTube channel in this year, and is also technically priced slightly closer, but with significantly different chipset and setup. For now, I'm going to wrap up this video. If you don't already, please do subscribe to the Tech Travel Geeks here on YouTube. We will be covering more of both these two devices, the Nokia 3.4 and the OnePlus Nord N100. We'll also be continuing our coverage of Vivo devices in the coming weeks. But for now, thanks for watching and goodbye from us.